guys, how's it going? My name is Dal, and the WoW's 20th anniversary update, patch 11.05, has seen a number of class revamps and changes, some big, some small. So far, we've covered some of the bigger ones, like a restructure to the class of Hunter with a revamp and a refresh of the Dark Ranger playstyle, which is really inspiring some fresh new life into the class of Hunter, and they're doing the same type of revamp for a number of classes, Paladins included. Now, Paladin set of changes is not as massive for specs like Retribution, Holy, and Protection, but the entire class talent tree is seeing a nice bit of refreshment that adds a lot more flavor and class fantasy back into the Paladin gameplay, where every single Paladin is going to embrace this blessed guardian of their group, the protector, as well as the shining light of every party. And they're doing this through a number of mechanical changes, but also thematic changes as well. Plus a nice bit of an adjustment for the Lightsmith Paladin to make him a lot stronger than ever before. So today's video, I really want to dial in and focus in on all of these new Paladin things happening for the WoW's 20th anniversary. As always, if you guys want to see more regular updates like these for the War Within, be sure to follow the channel and subscribe. Otherwise, let's dive right in. So let's take a look at all the new Paladin changes, and these are all the things that are not available in live, but are something we can test right now over on the PTR. This is just the very first build, so expect additional Paladin changes, and let your voices known in the comments down below of anything that you like or dislike regarding the Paladin changes and what would you want to see in future builds. But with Paladins, for the most part, we're seeing an adjustment in the class talent tree, which is similar, but also very different. We'll find that there's some new talents interwoven in between, and also a pretty big change when it comes to capstones, which we'll get into. There's also some side adjustments to the the Lightsmith hero spec, as well as some very minor adjustments for like Ret, Holy, and Prod, but they're more generalized changes more than anything. So I'm kind of going to go over all of these new changes from the top. Of the bad Paladins will get access to things such as Hammer of Wrath. You pick up auras of Resolute, which now includes all three auras immediately from Crusader, Concentration, and Devotion, so you no longer need to spend a talent just to pick up Crusader aura as a prop Paladin or anything like that. And then depending on your spec, you also get Lay on Hands, so this is going to be kind of like a normal starter option from the get-go. So pretty early on, we already get some new talents such as an upgrade for your Lay on Hands called Imperial Ward. Lay on Hands grants the target 100% increased armor for 30 seconds and ignores healing reduction effects when you use the ability, which is going to be interesting. Question is, does this get reduced by dampening in PvP? Because dampening is one of those mechanics where the longer the game goes on, the less healing you'll get. So I guess it may ignore that completely. Then there's also some boss mechanics where you can no longer heal an ally until they maybe execute a certain mechanic, so you may be able to bypass it completely. And then other healing reduction effects that would happen from enemies in dungeons, for example, with a tank buster, where they put tank under danger, reducing the amount of healing they get. I guess a paladin can bypass it completely. So it's interesting to see what they can do with Imperial Ward. Seems like a very little thing, but the possibilities with this are pretty exciting. Also, pretty early on, you'll be able to pick up Repentance or a Blinding Light, no longer being a talent that you pick up towards the bottom left, but rather in the middle, so you could easily spec into it and further upgrade it with Light's Countenance, which reduces the cooldown of Repentance and Blinding Light by 15 seconds, which is always a good bonus. But further down below Cleanse Toxins, whenever you do remove toxins or any effects from an ally, you also heal them for a portion of health. I guess depending, maybe scaling off of either your primary stats or versatility, or maybe a set number. I haven't really been able to test it too much over on the PTR, but it does give you some bonus healing when you do get to cleanse an ally. For Retribution Paladins, you also pretty early will be able to pick up After Image or Healing Hands, which for most red Paladins, you'll probably be running with Healing Hands at all times. This is also up here available for Prod as well and Holy, but they only get After Image, so you can pick up After Image pretty early on into the class talent tree. But further down from there is Holy Reprieve, which allows you to actually reduce the duration of your forbearance by 10 seconds. This can actually be kind of useful because it allows you to use some of your bigger Paladin abilities, the Blessing of Protection, Bubble, which may not even follow into a whole forbearance section, but also Lay on Hands a little bit more aggressively. So this actually could be a decent talent, but I guess testing will tell. Right below Divine Steed, you get a talent of Divine Spurs, where Divine Steed's cooldown is reduced by 20%, but its duration is reduced by 40%. So if you don't want to have a longer lasting horse, but someone you could use more regularly to make micro adjustments and quick speedy movements to the side, away out of mechanics or something, that does give you a bit of a new way to play around with the Divine Steed ability. Divine Steed can also be further upgraded, sorta. You can either pick up Blessing of Freedom, so you can either bless an ally, that used to be just a very basic thing that Paladin's gotten, or now you can combine Blessing of Freedom into your horse instead, so it grants you 3 seconds of Blessing of Freedom every time you horse, so I guess it combines the two abilities together, might be something that's useful in PvP. Then below that is the talent of Unbound Freedom for both Ret and Prot. Blessing of Freedom increases your movement speed by 30% and you gain Blessing of Freedom when cast on a friendly target. Apparently they've also added a blue post where if you are using someone like Steed of Liberty or Blessing of Freedom on yourself while using the talent of Unbound Freedom, it's supposed to apply a Hand of Freedom on a random ally. So, or rather, a Blessing of Freedom. It used to be called a Hand of Freedom back in the day, but it applies a Blessing of Freedom even if you use it on yourself selfishly. It'll still grant somebody in your group, somebody near you, also a freedom buff as well. So even if you're running the selfish horse freedom, it'll still apply freedom for somebody else in your group either way. Over to the right hand side we have Turn Evil, a spell that has limited uses, may actually get some play with the current season of Mythic Plus Dungeons, where we get to go back into the Shadowlands, which are filled with a bunch of undeads and aberrations. Now, there's two ways to transform Turn Evil, either with Wretched Evil, where it allows you to basically have an instant cast, where it allows you to reduce the cast time of Turn Evil by 100%, or you can give Turn Evil an AoE component where it affects 5 additional enemies, which I think is probably going to be one of the better choices when it comes to just getting yourself mad CC. But I think Wretched Evil, depending on situations, can also be really good if you need like an extra way to disrupt an aberration, an undead, or a demonic target. Though in this current season of dungeons where you're fighting either Earthern or Nerubians, there's not too many undeads or aberrations, but I think this Carden or some of the Carden enemies, like a Stone Vault, may actually count as aberrations or elementals, one of those two. I'll need to double check on that one. Take a look further down into the talent tree, we see that Divine Toll, an ability that's used by every single Paladin, has been moved front and center into the talent tree, making it a must pick up no matter the build that you run. This is huge. It also gave it a little bit of a different icon, so it has more of this yellow Paladin holy glow to it, but it functions exactly the same as before. With a minute cooldown, it does the same thing, either throwing judgments, shields, or holy shocks depending on the spec of Paladin. But moving this talent does at least help kind of allocate the talent tree around this core mechanic. It makes it just front and center, which is so much easier to spec into. Further down you still have Divine Resonance or Quicken Invocation, which all do exactly the same thing as the live versions. On the right hand side you do have a new one of Consecrated Ground, where Consecration is a little larger and pops an immediate slow in the class challenge tree. This could actually be kind of good even for someone like Ret, because Ret Paladins get Consecration for free through Blaze of Justice, so you'll be able to add a constant passive slow that could be actually kind of decent in both raiding content and potentially in PvP and in dungeons. Further down, right below Blessing of Protection and Blessing of Sacrifice, we have a new talent choice, either with Divine Purpose, where Holy Power spenders have a chance to make an next Holy Power spending ability free and deal 10% more damage or healing depending on the effect, or a more passive Sacred Strength option, where Holy Power spending abilities are 2% more effective. It's going to be interesting to see. I guess it all depends how often Divine Purpose procs, but 2% more value, I don't know. I almost kind of leaning right now towards Divine Purpose, and I feel like it is a gambler's gambit here, but I feel like it might be a little more effective, but Simming will give us more info. Below Blessing of Sacrifice, we have Recompensance and Sacrifice of the Just, but right below that, even more talents that interact with the Blessing of Sacrifice, such as Worthy Sacrifice, where you automatically cast Blessing on an ally within 40 yards when they're below 35% health, and as long as you're not in a crowd control effect. This effect activates 100% of the Blessing of Sacrifice's cooldown, so it's kind of like an emergency blessing that happens automatically. Does put the ability on cooldown completely though, so very interesting option that both, all 3 specs, Holy, Prot, and Red, all get access to. The other option is Righteous Protection. Blessing and Sacrifice now removes and prevents poisons and disease effects. A little bit more of a niche ability, but can be, I feel like, very strong in very specific situations. And in that same row, we have a bunch of new options such as Lead the Charge, where Divine Steed reduces the cooldown of 4 nearby allies' major movement spells by 3 seconds, and also grants you 3% passive movement speed, which as a Paladin, which sometimes struggles with movement, I think I'll take the 3% extra movement speed generally. In the middle row, we have Holy Ritual, where allies are healed for a certain number. This, I guess, scales with a certain stat of yours. Whenever you cast a blessing on them, and they're healed again for that same amount when the blessing expires. So the more aggressively you throw blessings around, the more healing you can do on your allies. To the right of that, we have Blessed Calling, where allies affected by blessings have a 50% increased movement speed. So again, the more blessings you throw out, the more value you're going to be able to provide to everybody in your group. To the right of that, we have Inspired Guard, where Divine Protection and for prop paladins, Ardent Defender. Increase your healing taken by 15% during that defensive's duration, which is a significant defensive upgrade. I mean, 50% more healing, whether it is self-healing or whether it's healing from another source, is a really good buff in order to provide a little bit more survivability for either spec of Paladin. And in action, we have some new options such as Stoicism, where the duration of stun effects on you is reduced by 20%. That is kind of a massive buff, in fact. 20% stun reduction can be good in PvE situations, but incredible in PvP, which is something that they've noted that they're going to be tuning and adjusting that value for PvP specifically. So it is advantageous for Paladins, but not disruptive to the core PvP gameplay. Further to the right hand side, we have Eye for an Eye, where melee and ranged attackers receive holy damage each time they strike you while your defenses are active, whether it is Divine Protection for Retribution or Divine Shield, which is Bubble. In most cases, most things are not going to be attacking you while Bubble is active, but in some PvE situations, maybe you can Bubble Taunt and then just cause the damage to just be reflected back at the target, so that could be good in some scenarios. And to the right of that, we have the Taunt of Selfless Healer, where Flash of Light is 30% more effective on your allies, but you also get 40% of that healing done to you as well. As for your capstones, we have Dusk and Dawn, which is roughly the same as it was before. With Blessing of Dawn, your next Holy Power spending ability deals 20% additional damage or healing. This effect stacks, while with Dusk, your damage taken is reduced by 4% for 10 seconds. So it is one of those effects where you gain Dawn, which buffs your next Holy Power spender, which results in a nice bit of protection afterwards. In the middle row, we have Light Bearer, where 10% of all healing done to you from other sources outside of yourself is now replicated to 4 nearby allies, divided evenly among them. So the more healing a paladin gets, like a protection paladin, the more offshoot healing they could do for everybody around them, which is also kind of interesting. And I kind of like this whole light bearer, how healing reflects off of the paladin to supplement your allies. And I love this whole thematic thing going on where paladins are so much more supportive and group oriented no matter the spec. On the right hand side, we have a pretty big one, Light's Revocation. We're removing harmful effects with Divine Shield, heals you for 10% of your health for each effect removed, up to 30% of your maximum health. But it also takes Divine Shield out of Forbearance. So now you can use Lay on Hands, and if you're in trouble, bubble yourself right after, and you can do both at the same time. Or bubble and then use Lay on Hands if you want to, or bop and bubble, or anything like that. So it gives you a little bit more freedom and control of how you use your defensive abilities. And I think this is going to be amazing for PvP in particular, because it gives paladins a bit more of a strategic use when it comes to some of the major defensives, but also in PvE content, this gives you a little bit more freedom of your defensive uses as well. So you can chain like a Blessing of Protection into a bubble for very key situations, but it also does allow you to play around the Forbearance ability. Let's say if you have other paladins in your raid. Let's say you're a protection paladin and you know you have a situation where you'll need to bubble during a very key moment inside of like a big trash bag or a boss ability, and you're saving that bubble for just a quick moment, but the holy paladin in your group hits you with a Lay on Hands because they panic, and now you have Forbearance on you, which doesn't allow you to bubble. So this essentially allows you to still use bubble even if other paladins are in the group, and I think from that perspective, it's massively beneficial. These sounds, however, are a little bit different for the class challenger, whether you're Prot or Holy. For Prot in particular, they have a Shield Slam or Shield of the Righteous bonus where you gain some additional armor instead of the AoE Divine Storm healing that Retribution paladins get, but for the most part, good portion of these talents are the same. You do also get a Zealot's Paragon, where Hammer, Wrath, and Judgment deal 5% additional damage and extend the duration of your wings, and that is only available for Protection Paladins specifically. And the way that Holy Paladins are different compared to Red is below the Hand of Freedom or Blessing of Freedom. I keep calling it Hand of Freedom because that's what it used to be called back in the day. Blessing of Freedom or Steed of Liberty. Below that, they have Echo and Blessings, where Blessing of Freedom increases the target's movement speed by 15%. Blessing of Protection on Blessing of Sacrifice reduces the target's damage taken by 15%, and this effect linger for 8 seconds after the blessing ends. So their version of blessings is a little bit different. Then we also got a few adjustments for the Lightsmith Paladin specifically, which is available for Prot and Holy. The talent tree doesn't look all that different, but they do have a new choice node over on the bottom right hand side. The two new talents are going to be either Authoritative Rebuke, Authoritative Rebuke. Okay, I'm definitely going to get that one wrong in the future, but Successfully interrupting enemies' spellcast will reduce the cooldown of Rebuke by 1 second. This is particularly good for protection since they get shields that can help reduce the cooldown of their Rebuke even faster. This effect is increased by 100% while wielding a holy armament, which Pride and Holy should wield almost at all times, since every time they use their sword or bulwark, they should be able to get a copy of it as well, so you should be constantly wielding a weapon or a shield at all times. The other option is going to be tempered in battle. Whenever you or an ally are wielding a bulwark or the shield effect from the Lightsmith ability and are healed above max health, you transfer 100% of that overhealing to the other ally. Or whenever you or the ally wielding the sacred weapon drop below 40% health, you redistribute your health immediately and then every 1 second for 4 seconds. So this gives you a little bit extra if you are overhealing an ally, or if they're getting overhealing, the other party also gets a little bit more value out of it, making sure that none of that healing is wasted between the two players. Or if somebody doesn't end up dropping super low on health with a sacred weapon equipped, then the health then you kind of do this Spirit Link type of effect where you get to normalize each other's health bars very, very quickly and standardize it, and that helps you just survive some of the tougher encounters. This is a very, very interesting talent, and I think actually Tempered in Battle seems a little stronger than Authoritative Rebuke. Again, gonna get that one wrong a lot of the times. And it seems like a very powerful defensive option in particular for the spec of the Lightsmith. Besides this, we also saw some generalized Paladin changes, such as Prot Pal is getting Refining Fire. Enemies struck by Avenger's Shield will burn with Holy Fire, suffering additional dot damage over 5 seconds. And that's about it. All they saw is the Consecrated Ground removed from the spec talent tree into the class talent tree, so they replace it with a little bit of damage over time, which I guess is kind of nice. But besides this, Prot Pally also saw a damage buffs of 20% more healing with Word of Glory and 20% more damage with Shield of the Righteous, which is pretty strong on its own. Holy Paladin saw a 5% buff with the Word of Glory healing, while Shield of the Righteous saw a 10% buff, and Retribution Paladin saw a 10% buff for Word of Glory and a 20% buff for Shield of the Righteous. The Shield of the Righteous isn't an ability you're going to use as Ret that often. There have been some wacky builds in the past where players have used the Shield Paladin builds before for niche uses, specifically in PvP for fun. But like we mentioned earlier, majority of the Paladin changes are going to come from the class talent tree. But with that, that's going to be literally the entire revamp coming to Paladins, though as it's been the first build of the PTR, I assume there's probably going to be more adjustments in the future, and if anything major shows up, we'll definitely do another video, take another look at everything new with the class of Paladin. As always, I want to thank all of you guys so much for watching this video, and hope all of you enjoyed. And if you did enjoy it or found it informative, go ahead and give it a like. I would very, very much appreciate it. Join our Discord community if you want to go on to discuss all of the different changes that we talked about in today's update. Also, let me know all your thoughts in the comments down below. And as always, I'll see all of you guys in the next one.